we're going to look at creating a pair of glasses on a 3D reference image that we're going to bring into the modeling workspace, and we're going to work from a reference image and create a pair of glasses like the ones that you can see in front of you. So let's get started. So before we start with the modeling stage, let me just give some information based on the image that I'm using as a reference. So here I am inside of Krita, and what I've done is I've taken a screenshot of one of the head models that's inside of 3DCoat. So with this screenshot that's been taken, I've just placed it as an orthographic view, and then what I've done is I've generated a design for my glasses object over the top of this initial screenshot. So you can see something like this. So I'm interested in the design of these glasses here, and this is what we are going to try to replicate now and model inside of the modeling workspace. Okay, let's take a look now at how we're going to bring that reference into 3DCoat, and also how we're going to use a different kind of reference, a 3D reference, in addition to the 2D reference that we've just generated. So to start off, I'm going to bring in the 3D reference. So I'm going to use this option here on the main menu, Paint UV Mapped Mesh. When I click this, you'll see that my dialog changes, and you can see the head model that I want to use. So I'm going to select that model. The next dialog that pops up, we're just going to leave everything as is, because we're only using this as a reference model, and we don't need to worry about UV set names and all the other options that you can see here. So I'm just going to say OK. Once that model is loaded in, you can see here, like that screenshot we showed previously, we have the same model here in 3D. This model comes with two objects. One of these objects is actually not needed, and it's this one here called Polysurface 87. If I toggle this one on and off, you can see that this object, it doesn't affect this object at all. So for clarity, I'm just going to delete this. The next you can see here is Polysurface 87, Polysurface 87. It's not a very descriptive name here, so I'm just going to call this 3D reference and say OK. At least now it's a little bit clearer as to its function in terms of this project. Now if you haven't got this painting objects window tab open, go to Windows, Panels, and scroll down the list here until you find Painting Objects. So there's our 3D reference ready to go. Now you'll notice as well here we've got a color palette with this image in. If you don't see this, again, go to Windows, Panels, and this time choose Color Palette. The shortcut is B. So this is showing just a generic image here, which comes with 3DCoat. We need to change this and import the Krita image that we designed. So here I'm going to hit this little plus icon here, and it's going to navigate to my folder where I saved the project. And it's going to navigate to the folder where I saved my reference. And here it is. I'm just going to select that and say open. Now you can see my reference has been included in here. If you want to zoom in and out of your reference, you've got these little icons at the bottom here to help you to do that. This image here uses the same navigation system as the main viewport window. If I right mouse click holding the Alt button, then I can zoom in and out. If I middle mouse button and click down, I can pan around the image. These two icons here will do the same thing. That's my 3D reference included, as well as my 2D reference. So now, with that set, I'm going to move over to the modeling room by clicking this tab here. Now inside the modeling room, the layout of the modeling room is different. However, the panel that you see here is exactly the same. It's just located in a different area of my interface. Yours may be different than mine. You'll need to go over to the Windows, Panels, and bring up the color palette for this particular workspace. Once you've created your workspace, then you can save this. Go into Windows, Store this page layout, or Store Workspace. Again, we can see the Painting Objects tab here. I've located it in this top right corner, but you can see it's got the name 3D Reference, and I can toggle this on and off with the eyeball icon here. Make sure that your 3D reference and the object in here is on orthographic view. And with that done, we're good to go. Save your project under File, Save As, and save this now into a location where we don't have to go through that process again. So I've gone ahead and saved my project as glasses_01. So here I'm just going to zoom in with Alt right mouse button, because I'm only really interested in half of this illustration here. And I'm just going to reproduce that on half of this and mirror that over to the other half there. So with that done, let's get started with the actual modeling process. So with my 3D reference and my 2D reference sorted, now I'm going to start to place some geometry down. And I'm going to use the Points to Polys tool here. And with my 3D reference in the background, as it is being a reference object, I'm going to be able to use the Points to Polys to snap to this geometry, and it's just going to give me a rough shape of the orbit of this eye and mimic the wraparound effect that these glasses have. Now when you're starting out, don't try to make things perfect at the beginning. Block in as much as you can and then refine afterwards. If you're refining every point as you place it, it's going to be very tedious for you to finish this project off. If you block in quickly, you can see the overall picture of what you're trying to do, and then just it's a refining process from there. So with that being said, let's make a start and let's just put some points down. And what I'm going to try and do is just replicate these angles in the design here very loosely. It doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, it's a real mess, but that's fine. At least we've got some polys down and we can start to refine. So right mouse button and just start to refine the shapes. So what am I trying to do? I'm trying now to get the thickness, the width of this frame here, and trying to replicate that, because as you can see, mine's all over the place at the moment. So I need to try to make this more even. So in other words, these edges here need to be even all the way around. So let's try to do that. Okay, now I'm starting to lose my geometry inside because I've not got enough polys on here. So to help me, I can either just hide the reference, and I can still move these around. So I've just created an extra point here, which I don't want. That can sometimes happen, and that's why clear points is there, just to remove any accidental points that you create. And I'll just try to even these up a little bit more. So with that roughly placed in there, let's bring back my reference. What I'll do now is I'm going to switch tools and use the freeform tool here and move this whole mesh away from the face. So I'm bringing it towards the camera, towards our viewing point here. Okay, drop that tool, escape. And what I want to do now is I want to make sure that you can see this inner edge here is a little bit warped. It's very distorted. I need to make this a little bit more even. So I'm going to try to pull out some of these edges here like so. So I will just use my select, transform, and just move those ones out. and this final point here. If you get to a point where you're trying to move these and it's constantly moving between these 2 points and you want this one and it's selecting it, it's just because this ring here is too large, your brush size is too large, and you have to decrease so it's only focusing inside of there. It can be frustrating when you're using it. And this is very much the refining process of the polys that we have so far. Okay, so with that done, I just need to move this one up a little bit more. It's got a little bit more of an angle there than I was giving it. Moving 2 points at the same time, I select that edge, just move those. So with that done now, let's now refine this a little bit more and add a little bit more geometry. So I want to create a little bit of an extrusion on the inside here, which is going to eventually fit the lens into. To do that, I'm going to select these edges here. And I'll use the transform here, just do a basic extrusion. So I'll hit commit, extrude, and then I'm just going to push this one inwards. Maybe just scale it inwards as well, that way. It's a little bit too thick, that one is. Okay, that's fine. Maybe just scale that one in a little bit more. Escape to drop the tool. The next part of the design here, we have this little frame here, very thin part of the frame. Now that extrusion there helps not only with the lens, but it also gives me these two edges here, this one and this one, where I can start to make that little piece there. So with those two selected, I'm going to hit space and I'm going to bridge between those two. And I've got two divisions selected, which is perfect because I need to make a bend in this polygon here. So that edge will give me that ability. So with that done, I've said OK, I'll select that edge now. And now I can either use transform or move and then just move that over like so. So that gives me that little bit of an edge on there. Let's see how that looks moving round. Rotate that a little bit over. Okay, that's okay for now. I know that on this junction here of my design that I need another one of these going off in this direction. And now I need something that's going to go off in this direction. And it's worth just building that in now, even though I won't be doing that section just yet. So let me just drop that selection there. I'll use the add and split tool here and I'll zoom in, make sure my brush size is a little bit smaller and click the first point, and I'm just going to make a triangle there and escape to drop the tool. Use move, points. So I want this width here to be roughly the same as this one, so I'll just expand this one out there. So now I'm going to be able to extrude this edge here. Let's choose select. It's just to make it highlight for you. This edge here, and that one is going to run along here. So this is part of a lens as well, this orange lens here, and it has this little frame detail around it. So this is just building that in for when I need it. Let's just drop the tool here, escape, and now let's have a look. So I'm now going to start thinking, as I have done here, about how I'm going to start going around the side of the head with these glasses, this arm here, and how it's going to connect to the actual frame. And I want this to be a little bit thicker here to be able and give me a little bit more geometry on this side to do that. So I'm going to extrude this edge here out a little bit. So I will again use that transform tool. I will hit commit extrusion and I will just extrude that edge out like so. And then again, I'll use the add and split here and I just want to connect those two pieces there like so, and that's going to give me this extra width on this frame here and allow me to connect my arms that go over the back of the ears, or however this fixes on there. Let's just pull this one out a little bit more. So when I'm moving around the model here, I'm making decisions on how I feel this looks. Use my select, make sure edges are selected, just double click that edge there and just use that transform tool there and just move those down. Again, your design may look a little bit different, and it really doesn't matter with this project. The idea is just to practice with these tools at this stage. Probably a little bit too far in that way. Okay, that's better. And drop the tool. So now that I've got my frame blocked out, I'm going to just rename this layer now frame and create a new layer and call this one arms, and move to the side of the model now, and just again block out where I want these arms to be on the model. Again, I'll start with the points to polys tool, and I'll just, again, that's it, something like that. I think what I'll do straight away here is just move this geometry away from the head. So I will select and transform and choose this poly here, and then just move the whole thing away from the head. And for now, I'm just going to just hide that reference as well. So I'll just move that in line because it's going to connect eventually to this piece here. And escape and Control D to drop the tool. Let's bring my reference back. And two things that are going to happen here. I've got this little piece that we created before, this little triangle, and that's going to have to connect up to the frame here. There's a very strange kind of highlight on this image here, which doesn't really make sense in terms of how it's connecting on there. But what I want to do is leave a little bit of a space for that to happen. So what I'll do here is just continue extruding actually. The reference mesh, as you can see here, has got hair built into it, modeled into it. So this is disappearing inside that hair effectively as I go around. So in order to keep things clear, I'm going beyond the hair, whereas in actual fact, the arms of the glasses would go into the hair, and you probably wouldn't see this part here because the hair would be covering it. But for now, let's just move around that aspect of this project. Okay, so with that done, I now need to think about this section down here and how it's going to connect here. So I'm going to put a little bit of geometry in at the base here. So I will use my split rings command, split rings, and it's going to be this thin piece again. So I'm going to need a thin, and I'm going to extrude now and sort of bridge these two edges together. I'll choose select, choose this edge, choose my transform. I'm going to commit an extrusion there and just start going down in this direction. So I'm a little bit off actually on this, but let's continue. Let's select these pieces here. I think this needs to come out a little bit more, so let's do the freeform. Just pull all of this out to the side. And I'm going to change the tool to free rotate here. And I just need to rotate this out this way actually. Let's move it that way. Just a little bit too much. We blocked in the frame and we've blocked in this shape here for the arms as well. We've only created so far flat polys. They've got no thickness to them. They're just one-sided polys for now. One of the reasons I place these on different layers is because now I can have independence of the arms and the frame whilst manipulating and changing the geometry. If I use the move tool here and move this vertice close to the frame layer here, it will actually weld to that frame. Okay, so you saw that slight color change there. And the same here, if I move this to here, it will weld to those points. And as soon as you do that, you can see that this edge here is far too long compared to the other edge. So we can use the slide vertex tool here and just slide that down to even up the length of these edges here, like so. And also I'm noticing here that this edge here isn't quite right. I think it's a little bit too far in. So I'm going to use a select point, select this point here and just translate that point. And I just need it to move a little bit further out this way actually. And as a result of that move, I'm going to have to change a couple of these other points as well now. Okay, that's a little bit better. And now I've still got this bevel on the edge, but it's less than it was before. And it just feels as if now it's going to move into that little frame on the side a little bit easier as well. And whilst I'm doing this, I'm going to select my faces now, select this face here, and just move this face out a little bit more as well. There does seem to be here this angle on here, so I'm just going to try to replicate that a little bit by pulling that out. Maybe not that much. These are still independent layers. We can turn each one off individually and they aren't actually connected. Although we weld, I mentioned welding them together, they aren't actually welded together. The points are just snapped together. I think what I'm going to have to do as well is put a couple of divisions in this here which will match up with this as it arches around here. So let's do that now because I think that's an important step. So I'm going to place this point here. So imagine this line, this one here coming down to this point, and then this one coming down to roughly that point there. So now I'll just use the vertex slide, just move that somewhere like that. And I think that's going to help me to bring these two together further down the line. In part 2, we'll continue to refine and complete the glasses model. See you next time.